Research problem. What is a research problem? The term problem means a question or issue to be examined. Research problem refers to some difficulty/need which a researcher experiences in the context of either theoretical or practical situation and wants to obtain a solution for the same. How do we know we have a research problem? Customer complaints. Conversation with company employees. Observation of inappropriate behavior or conditions in the firm. Deviation from the business plan. Macron success of the firm's competitors. Relevant reading of published material, trends, regulations. Company records and reports. The first step in the research process, definition of the problem, involves two activities: identification, selection of the problem. Formulation of the problem. Identification/selection of the research problem. This step involves identification of a few problems and selection of one out of them, after evaluating the alternatives against certain selection criteria. Sources of problems. Reading. Academic experience. Daily experience. Exposure to field situations. Consultations. Brainstorming. Research. Intuition. Criteria of selection. The selection of one appropriate researchable problem out of the identified problems requires evaluation of those alternatives against certain criteria. They are: internal, personal criteria, researcher's interest, researcher's competence, researcher's own resource, finance and time. External criteria or factors, researchability of the problem, importance and urgency, novelty of the problem, feasibility, facilities, usefulness, and social relevance, research personnel. Definition/formulation of the research problem. Formulation is the process of refining the research ideas into research questions and objectives. Formulation means translating and transforming the selected research problem/topic/idea into a scientifically researchable question. It is concerned with specifying exactly what the research problem is. Problem definition or problem statement is a clear, precise and succinct statement of the question or issue that is to be investigated with the goal of finding an answer or solution. There are two ways of stating a problem. 1. Posting questions. 2. Making declarative statements. Process involved in defining the problem. Statement of the problem in a general way. Understanding the nature of problem. Surveying the available literature. Developing ideas through discussions. Rephrasing the research problem. Criteria of a good research problem. Clear and unambiguous empirical. Verifiable, interesting, novel and original. Availability of guidance. Defining problem, results in clear-cut research objectives. Symptom detection. Analysis of the situation. Problem definition. Statement of research objectives. Establishment of research objectives. Research objectives are the specific components of the research problem that you'll be working to answer or complete in order to answer the overall research problem. Churchill, 2001. The objectives refers to the questions to be answered through the study. They indicate what we are trying to get from the study or the expected results, outcome of the study. Establishment of research objectives. Research objectives should be clear and achievable, as they directly assist in answering the research problem. The objectives may be specified in the form of either statements or questions. Generally, they are written as statements, using the word to. For example, to discover, to determine, to establish, etc. Review of literature. Literature review is the documentation of a comprehensive review of the published and unpublished work from secondary sources of data in the areas of specific interest to the researcher. The main aim is to find out problems that are already investigated and those that need further investigation. It is an extensive survey of all available past studies relevant to the field of investigation. It gives us knowledge about what others have found out in the related field of study and how they have done so. Purpose of review: to gain a background knowledge of the research topic, to identify the concepts relating to it, potential relationships between them, and to formulate researchable hypothesis, to identify appropriate methodology, research design, methods of measuring concepts and techniques of analysis, to identify data sources used by other researchers. Vertical bar: to learn how others structured their reports. How to conduct the literature survey. Identify the relevant sources. Extract and record relevant information. Write up the literature review. Sources of literature: negation books and journals, negation electronic databases, bibliographic databases, abstract databases, full-text databases, government and industry reports, Internet. Research dissertations. 56. Points to be kept in mind while reviewing literature. Read relevant literature. Refer original works. Read with comprehension. Read in time. Index the literature. Formulation of hypothesis. Hypothesis. A hypothesis is an assumption about relations between variables. Hypothesis can be defined as a logically conjectured relationship between two or more variables expressed in the form of a testable statement. Relationships are conjectured on the basis of the network of associations established in the theoretical framework formulated for the research study. Variables. Anything that can vary can be considered as a variable. A variable is anything that can take on differing or varying values. For example, age, production units, absenteeism, sex, motivation, income, height, weight, etc. Note: the values can differ at various times for the same object or person, or, at the same time for different objects or persons. Variable, attribute. A variable is a characteristic that takes on two or more values, whereas an attribute is a specific value on a variable, qualitative. For example, the variable sex/gender has two attributes, male and female. The variable agreement has 5 attributes: strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. Types of variables. Explanatory versus extraneous variable. The variables selected for analysis are called explanatory variables, and all other variables that are not related to the purpose of the study but may affect the dependent variable are extraneous. Dependent versus independent variable. The variable that changes in relationship to changes in another variables is called dependent variable. The variable whose change results in the change in another variable is called an independent variable. Or, an independent variable is the one that influences the dependent variable in either a positive or negative way. Hypothesis. Research hypothesis is a predictive statement that relates an independent variable to a dependent variable. Hypothesis must contain at least one independent variable and one dependent variable. Hypothesis. Hypotheses are tentative, intelligent guesses as to the solution of the problem. Hypothesis is a specific statement of prediction. It describes in concrete terms what you expect to happen in the study. Hypothesis is an assumption about the population of the study. It delimits the area of research and keeps the researcher on the right track. Problem versus hypothesis. Hypothesis is an assumption that can be tested and can be proved to be right or wrong. A problem is a broad question which cannot be directly tested. A problem can be scientifically investigated after converting it into a form of hypothesis. Characteristics of hypothesis. Conceptual clarity: it should be clear and precise. Specificity: it should be specific and limited in scope. Consistency: it should be consistent with the objectives of research. Testability: it should be capable of being tested. Expectancy: it should state the expected relationships between variables. Characteristics of hypothesis. Simplicity: it should be stated as far as possible in simple terms. Objectivity, it should not include value judgments, relative terms or any moral preaching. Theoretical relevance, it should be consistent with a substantial body of established or known facts or existing theory. Availability of techniques, statistical methods should be available for testing the proposed hypothesis. Sources of hypothesis. Discussions with colleagues and experts about the problem, its origin and objectives in seeking a solution. Examination of data and records for possible trends, peculiarities. Review of similar studies. Exploratory personal investigation, observation. Logical deduction from the existing theory. Continuity of research. Intuition and personal experience. Types of hypothesis. Descriptive hypothesis. These are assumptions that describe the characteristics, such as size, form or distribution, of a variable. The variable may be an object, person, organization, situation or event. Examples. Public enterprises are more amenable for centralized planning. Relational hypothesis, explanatory hypothesis, these are assumptions that describe the relationship between two variables. The relationship suggested may be positive, negative or causal relationship. Examples. Families with higher incomes spend more for recreation. Causal hypotheses state that the existence of or change in one variable causes or leads to an effect on another variable. The first variable is called the independent variable and the latter is the dependent variable. Null hypothesis. When a hypothesis is stated negatively, it is called null hypothesis. It is a no difference, no relationship hypothesis. It states that no difference exists between the parameter and statistic being compared to or no relationship exists between the variables being compared. It is usually represented as HO or H0. Example. H0, there is no relationship between a family's income and expenditure on recreation. Alternate hypothesis. It is the hypothesis that describes the researcher's prediction that there exists a relationship between two variables, or it is the opposite of null hypothesis. It is represented as HA or H1. Example. There is a definite relationship between families' income and expenditure on recreation. Forms of